I still remember the day Dad died. I was only 10, and it felt like someone had ripped my world apart. My name is Rachel, and before that terrible day, my life was full of adventure and joy. Every weekend, Dad and I would head out early in the morning, our bikes gleaming in the sunrise as we raced through the park. "Come on, Rachel, you can do it," he'd shout during my track meets, his voice carrying across the field. We'd spend hours training together, and he never missed a single one of my sports events. Whether it was soccer practice or a simple jog around the neighborhood, Dad was always there, cheering me on with his bright smile and endless enthusiasm. But everything changed after the funeral. Mom, who had always watched our sporty adventures with mild disapproval, suddenly became determined to transform me into someone else entirely. "Rachel, honey, put those running shoes away," she'd say, her voice tight with disappointment. "I bought you some lovely new ballet flats. Wouldn't you rather try those?" The changes came gradually at first, then like an avalanche. Gone were the weekend sports activities, replaced by shopping trips for dresses and makeup. Mom started buying me beauty magazines instead of sports equipment, and every birthday brought another pile of cosmetics I never wanted to use. "Sit still, Rachel," she'd command, trying to apply mascara to my fidgeting face. Every young lady needs to learn these things. But I didn't want to be a young lady. I wanted to run, to feel the wind in my hair, to race against my own best times like I used to do with Dad. The mirrors in our house became my enemies, reflecting back an image of what Mom wanted me to be, not who I was. It was clear that I wasn't the daughter she wanted. Every time I chose sneakers over heels or picked up a basketball instead of a makeup brush, I could see it in her face, that mix of frustration and disappointment that made me feel like I was somehow broken. 3 years passed this way, with Mom and me locked in a silent battle over who I should be. Then she met him, a widower, Richard, with a 9-year-old daughter, Anna. At first, I was hopeful that having someone new in the house might make things better. Maybe Mom would be happier and stop trying to change me so much. But Anna turned out to be a nightmare. She was everything I wasn't, perfectly dressed in frilly outfits, obsessed with makeup, and absolutely vicious when the adults weren't looking. She'd wait until Mom and her dad were distracted, then she'd do something nasty, hide my homework, mess up my room, or make snide comments about my boyish clothes. "She's just expressing herself," they'd say, while I sat there, knowing the truth. This wasn't independence or spirit, it was pure malice, carefully calculated to make my life miserable. And the worst part was, because she was younger than me, I couldn't do anything about it without looking like the bad guy. The wedding was small and quick, held in our backyard on a sunny Saturday afternoon. I stood there in an uncomfortable bridesmaid dress, watching my mom beam at her new husband and his daughter. They moved in the very next day, bringing boxes full of pink, frilly things that seemed to take over our home like an invasion. "Mom," Anna would call out in her sugary sweet voice, the word hitting me like a slap each time. "Can you help me with my hair?" And Mom would rush over, practically glowing with joy, while I stood in the doorway, invisible. It was like watching some twisted play where everyone had their perfect roles except me. Anna was everything Mom had always wanted. She'd spend hours trying on dresses, experimenting with makeup, and asking Mom for fashion advice. She never got dirty, never wanted to play sports, never did anything that wasn't ladylike. But behind closed doors, Anna was different. She'd wait until we were alone, then show her true colors. One morning, I woke up late for school because she'd snuck into my room and turned off my alarm clock. "Oh, did you oversleep?" she asked innocently at breakfast, while Mom frowned at me for being irresponsible. It got worse from there. She'd accidentally spill nail polish on my favorite sports jerseys, or forget she was supposed to share the bathroom. I'd end up washing my face in the kitchen sink, trying to get ready for school while she took hour-long showers. "Mom," I tried explaining one day after finding my homework soaked with water. "She's doing this on purpose." Mom just sighed and exchanged looks with my stepfather. "Girls, you're sisters now. You need to work these things out yourselves." "That's right," Richard agreed, patting his daughter's head. You two just need to learn to get along. But how could we get along when she was deliberately making my life hell? She'd hide my things, mess up my room, and then play innocent when I got angry. And the worst part was, Mom believed her act completely. That's when I started spending more time at Grandma's house. She lived just a few blocks away, and her home became my sanctuary. There, I didn't have to pretend or compete for attention. I could just be myself. "Are you sure everything's okay at home, Rachel?" Grandma would ask, her wise eyes seeing more than I wanted to share. "Yeah, I'm fine," I'd say, not wanting to burden her with the truth. "I just like spending time with you." She'd smile and squeeze my hand, and somehow that simple gesture meant more than all of Mom's forced attempts at bonding. At Grandma's house, there were no beauty magazines, no constant criticism of my clothes or behavior, no stepsister's mind games. Just acceptance and love, plain and simple. The years dragged by until finally, I made it through high school. I spent months researching colleges, staying up late to perfect my applications and essays. I applied to several schools, hoping at least one would accept me. When the acceptance letters started coming in, I could barely contain my excitement. 3 colleges wanted me, but one stood out from the rest. It offered a partial scholarship and was several states away. Perfect. I rehearsed how I'd tell Mom and my stepfather about it. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe they'd finally be proud of me. I chose breakfast time, when everyone was usually in a good mood. "I got accepted to 3 colleges," I announced, trying to keep my voice steady. "One of them is offering me a partial scholarship." Mom looked up from her coffee, her expression unreadable. Anna, now 14 and even more insufferable than before, paused mid-bite of her toast. "The tuition won't be too expensive with the scholarship," I continued, pulling out the acceptance letter. "And the school has a great program." "Rachel," Mom cut me off, exchanging a look with my stepfather. "You're an adult now. You need to figure out how to handle your own problems." I felt like I'd been slapped. But I thought. "We don't have money for your college right now," she said, pursing her lips. "We're saving up for your sister's education." Anna's face lit up with smug satisfaction. When Mom wasn't looking, she stuck her tongue out at me, like the mature 14-year-old she was. "But that's years away," I protested. "And with the scholarship?" I said no, Rachel. Mom's tone was final. She turned to Anna, completely dismissing me. "Sweetie, don't forget you have dance practice today." "I won't, Mom," she replied sweetly, emphasizing the word mom while smirking at me. I couldn't take it anymore. I pushed back my chair and left the table, my breakfast barely touched. Nobody called after me. Nobody came to check if I was okay. I could hear Mom and my stepsister chatting and laughing as if I hadn't even been there. In my room, I let the tears fall. All those years of hard work, of maintaining good grades while dealing with my stepsister's torment, and this was what I got. They were saving for her college, but couldn't spare anything for mine? The next morning, I went straight to Grandma's house. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" she asked, leading me to her cozy kitchen. The familiar smell of coffee and fresh bread wrapped around me like a comfort blanket. I told her everything, about the acceptance letters, the scholarship, and Mom's rejection. With each word, I could see Grandma's expression growing darker. Grandma's hands clenched around her coffee mug. "That's absolutely ridiculous. Sarah's forgotten herself completely." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Don't you worry about college, Rachel. I'll pay for it." "Grandma, no, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking, I'm offering," she said firmly. "I've been saving money my whole life, and what better use for it than my granddaughter's education? You're going to that college, and you're going to make your father proud." When I got home that evening, Mom was waiting in the living room. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw her face. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, and her eyes were blazing with anger. "So, you went running to your grandmother to complain about me," she spat out, before I could even close the front door. She called me today, yelling about how I'm neglecting you and refusing to pay for your college. How dare you make me look bad in front of my own mother? I didn't make you look bad, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You did that all by yourself when you chose your stepdaughter over me. Ungrateful, she shouted, her face reddening. After everything I've done for you. And now you're trying to cause problems between me and my mother? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I just told her the truth about what happened at breakfast. The truth? Mom laughed bitterly. The truth is that you're a spoiled, entitled brat who can't accept that she's not the center of attention anymore. Go to your room. I don't want to see your face until morning. I ran upstairs and slammed my door, my hands trembling as I turned the lock. Through the walls, I could hear my stepsister's muffled giggling from her room. She'd probably heard everything and was loving every second of it. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I packed my bags, clothes, important documents, the few photographs I had of Dad, and the medals we'd won together. By dawn, I had everything I needed. I waited until I heard Mom leave for her morning yoga class before slipping out of the house. The morning air felt fresh and clean, like a new beginning. I didn't look back as I walked to Grandma's house. She opened the door before I could even knock, as if she'd been expecting me. That evening, after settling into Grandma's spare room, I sent Mom a message. I'm staying at Grandma's until college starts. Don't worry about me. The message showed as read almost immediately, but no reply came. Not that day, not the next, not ever. The silence spoke volumes about where I stood in her life now. The weeks before college passed quickly at Grandma's house. I found a job at the Sweet Bean Cafe down the street, working as many shifts as they'd give me. Every dollar I earned went straight into my savings account. Finally, the day came to leave for college. The train station was quiet that early in the morning. Call me when you get there, Grandma said, hugging me tight. And remember, you can always come home, my home is your home now. I scanned the station one last time, part of me still hoping to see Mom appear at the last minute. But the only family I had there was Grandma, waving until the train pulled out of sight. College turned out to be everything I'd hoped for and more. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely, without walking on eggshells or watching my back. I made real friends, people who liked me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. I got a job at the campus library, shelving books and helping students find research materials. The quiet atmosphere and steady work helped me feel grounded, and the paycheck meant I didn't have to ask Grandma for money. Still, every month she'd send a few $100s, and no matter how many times I tried to refuse, she insisted. Mom became a ghost in my life, reduced to occasional text messages and obligatory holiday greetings. Once, about halfway through my freshman year, she sent me a message, "How are you?" I stared at those 3 words for a long time before responding with a simple, "Fine, studying hard." That was it, our longest conversation in months. After that, we settled into a routine of sorts. Merry Christmas and Happy Birthday became our only exchanges, each message feeling more hollow than the last. Sometimes I'd see photos on social media of Mom and my stepsister at shopping malls or fancy restaurants, both of them smiling like they had everything they wanted in the world. Maybe they did. As graduation approached, and I sent out 2 graduation invitations, one to Grandma and one to Mom. The second one felt like throwing a message in a bottle into the ocean. I knew it would probably never get a response, but something made me send it anyway. When Grandma called, I could tell something was wrong by the way her voice wavered. "Rachel, sweetheart," she said, "I'm not feeling well enough to travel. The doctor says I need to rest." My heart sank. After 4 years of hard work, the one person I wanted there wouldn't be able to come. I tried to hide my disappointment, but Grandma knew. "I'm so sorry, darling. I wanted so much to be there." That night, I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning as I tried to figure out a solution. Then it hit me, if Grandma couldn't come to graduation, maybe graduation could come to her. The next morning, I cornered my classmate Tyler, who was always tinkering with tech gadgets. Hey, you still have that mini camera that can do live streaming? I explained my plan, and his face lit up. That's brilliant. We can attach it to your graduation robe, and your grandmother can watch everything in real time on her phone. When I called Grandma to tell her my plan, I could hear the smile in her voice. You mean I'll be able to see everything? Just like I'm there? Everything, I promised. You'll hear the speeches, see me walk across the stage, everything. She started crying, happy tears this time. You're so clever, just like your father. He would be so proud of you, Rachel. Later that day, I gathered my friends to warn them about the live stream. Just watch your language, okay? My grandmother's going to be listening. They laughed kindly. Don't worry, my roommate Sarah assured me. We'll be on our best behavior. Promise. Standing in front of the mirror that night, I practiced my walk across the stage, imagining Grandma watching from her bed, probably with tissues ready. It wasn't the graduation ceremony I'd imagined when I first started college, but somehow it felt perfect. The graduation ceremony was everything I'd imagined. The sun was shining, the campus looked beautiful, and I could practically feel Grandma's presence through the tiny camera pinned to my robe. Everything was perfect, until I spotted her. Mom was sitting in the middle section, wearing a navy blue dress I'd never seen before. For a moment, I thought I was seeing things. But no, it was definitely her. My hand started shaking as I adjusted my cap, thankful that Grandma couldn't see my face through the camera. I managed to keep my composure through the ceremony, even as I walked across the stage to receive my diploma. The whole time, I could feel Mom's eyes on me. What was she doing here? She hadn't responded to the invitation, hadn't spoken to me in months except for the usual holiday messages. After the ceremony, while my friends were taking pictures and hugging their families, she appeared at my elbow. Rachel, she said, touching my arm. Can we talk privately? My throat tightened, but I nodded. We moved away from the crowd, to a quiet spot under a large oak tree. For a moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Maybe she'd finally realized what she'd done. Maybe she was here to apologize. I'm proud of you, she said, and for one brief, shining moment, I felt like a little girl again, desperate for her approval. Then she continued, and now that you're graduated and will be working, we need to talk about your sister's college fund. The world seemed to tilt sideways. What? Anna just graduated high school, Mom said, as if we were discussing the weather. Her grades weren't as good as yours, so she won't get any scholarships. She'll need to pay full tuition. I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. And what does that have to do with me? For years ago, you told me you were saving money for her college. That's why you couldn't help me, remember? Mom's face hardened. We had other expenses come up. Things happen, Rachel. You need to stop living in the past and help your family. Help my family? I could feel anger rising in my chest. The same family that threw me out? The same sister who made my life hell for years? Don't be dramatic, Mom snapped. You chose to leave. I'm not paying for her college, I said firmly. Not after everything she did to me. Mom's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, her fingers digging in painfully. Listen to me, you selfish, arrogant girl, she hissed, her face inches from mine. You are obligated to help your sister. If you refuse, don't even think about coming back to the house after graduation. In fact, I'll disown you completely. Is that what you want? That house belongs to Grandma, I reminded her, trying to keep my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Mom's laugh was cold and cruel, a sound I'd never heard from her before. Oh, sweetie, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Mom's not doing well. She's been sick for a while now. The gleam in her eyes made my stomach turn. Honestly, she's lingered longer than anyone expected. But when she does pass, and it won't be long now, everything goes to me. I'm her only daughter, after all. The casual way she spoke about Grandma's death, the barely concealed hope in her voice, made me feel physically ill. This wasn't my mother, or maybe it was, and I was just finally seeing her clearly. "I won't help you," I said, pulling my arm free from her grip. "Not now, not ever." I practically ran back to my dorm room, my graduation robe flapping behind me. As soon as I closed the door, my phone rang. It was Grandma. Rachel, her voice was sharp and clear, no trace of the illness Mom had described. I heard everything. My hand flew to the camera still pinned to my robe. In all the drama, I'd completely forgotten about the livestream. Grandma had witnessed the whole ugly scene. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," I stammered, sinking onto my bed. "I didn't mean for you to." "Listen to me," Grandma cut me off. "I need you to pack your things and come home right away." "Can you do that?" The drive to Grandma's house took several hours. The whole time, my mind kept replaying Mom's words, the way she'd talked about Grandma dying. How could she be so cold about her own mother? When I arrived, Grandma was sitting in her favorite armchair, looking frail and sickly. She gave me a tight hug, then sat me down at the kitchen table. "I had a very interesting conversation with your mother this morning," she said, pouring us both cups of tea. "After I heard what she said at your graduation, I called and told her to move out of my house." I nearly choked on my tea. "You what?" Grandma's eyes twinkled with a mixture of mischief and steel. She seemed quite shocked. Apparently, she's been operating under the delusion that my house is somehow her house. The next morning, Grandma and I drove to Grandma's house where my mother had been living. They were all there when we arrived: Mom, Richard, and Anna, who had grown taller but still wore the same smug expression I remembered. Mom barely glanced at me when we entered, not even bothering with a greeting. "Mother," she said, addressing Grandma while pointedly ignoring me. "This is all a misunderstanding. Rachel's been lying to you. I never said I would kick her out or anything like that." Grandma sat down in the living room armchair, her old favorite spot, and fixed Mom with a steady gaze. "I heard everything myself, Sarah." The camera on Rachel's graduation robe captured it all. Every threat, every cruel word, including your charming comments about hoping for my death. The color drained from Mom's face, but she quickly recovered. Her lips curved into that fake smile I knew so well. "Oh, Mom, you must have misunderstood. We can talk about this later, when everyone's calmer." "No, Sarah. There won't be a later." Grandma's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Tomorrow morning, I'm taking Rachel to the notary. I'm transferring ownership of this house to her, and while we're there, I'm updating my will to ensure all my savings go to her as well." The silence that followed was deafening. Anna's mouth hung open in shock. My stepfather seemed to shrink into himself. "And Mom exploded. "You manipulative little bitch," she screamed at me, all pretense of civility gone. "This was your plan all along, wasn't it? Turning my own mother against me? Playing the victim until you got everything you wanted?" She advanced toward me, but Grandma stepped between us. "Sarah, that's enough. You're both crazy," Mom shouted. "My own mother and daughter, conspiring against me. And you," she pointed a shaking finger at Grandma, "you're nothing but a senile old woman who's been fooled by this ungrateful, conniving." "1 hour," Grandma said quietly, but with such authority that Mom stopped mid-rant. "You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave. All of you." What followed was a blur of activity. Mom, Richard, and Anna rushed around the house, throwing things into boxes and suitcases. They made as much noise as possible, slamming doors and drawers, but Grandma and I sat quietly in the living room, watching the clock. Exactly 58 minutes later, they were gone. The house felt empty and clean, like the air after a storm. That evening, as Grandma and I sat in the kitchen making plans, I had an idea. "Grandma, why don't you move in here with me? We could rent out your house, and I could take care of you." She looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, that's not a bad idea. This house is bigger, after all, and it would be nice to have company." So that's what we did. Grandma's house was rented to a lovely young family, providing her with a steady income on top of her savings. We turned the living room into a cozy shared space where we spend our evenings watching old movies and talking about Dad. Sometimes I catch glimpses of Mom and my former stepsister around town. They always look away quickly, hurrying in the opposite direction. I've heard through mutual acquaintances that they moved into a small apartment across town, and my stepsister ended up going to community college instead of the expensive university she'd planned on. But honestly, I barely think about them anymore. My life is full of other things now: my job, my friends, and most importantly, my grandmother, who showed me what unconditional love really means. We've created our own little family, just the two of us, and it's more than enough. Every morning, I wake up to the smell of Grandma's coffee and the sound of her humming in the kitchen. Every evening, we sit together in the garden she's teaching me to tend. And every day, I'm thankful for the twist of fate that led me to wear that camera at graduation.